Live, or at least
Oh,
I'm really
okay.
hoping we're
Shh.
live. So I really believe that we're live and we're just going to keep running with it. So let's have some fun. This is going to be Phoenix Day. So let me just explain to you what Phoenix Day for me really means.
Mm,
It's the first day that I really took on 20 years ago. Actually, this is the 20th anniversary of the day in 2026 where I was going through a divorce. I was at one of the low parts of my life. Unfortunately, I've had lots of low parts of my life, and I'm sure so have many of the people who listen and who are part of this. So we're going to hear some Phoenix stories today, just to give you some expectations as to what we're doing. And the real truth of the matter is we're going to talk about some great stories. We're going to hear some stories. I'm going to start off by at least explaining to you what my story is and what that Phoenix does. So the Phoenix story for me 20 years ago, I was going through a divorce. I had my kids were 3 and 1, so they were really young. They didn't understand the impact of life, their lives or my life, and that wasn't part of our plan. Phoenix moments are not necessarily part of our life's plan, but it is part of our life. And how do we take it? A lot of life comes at us, and depending on how we do things, is how we move on. And woohoo. Um, so what I want to talk about is that day for me. I was invited. I worked for a top 50 company, and then I was invited to this women's conference. I was invited because I was there in the morning. It was an early morning. It was at the, New York Hilton, and the speakers were incredible. It was Geraldine Ferraro, who some people might not know, was the first woman to be on a major ticket to be vice president, and Madeline Albright. And so, some had big speakers. And during that speech, uh, we also heard the poem, at least for me, for the first time, was Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise. And as I was hearing that poem, it was talking about, the moon and all those things, but it still you rose. You rose out of the ashes. It didn't mention ashes. It actually mentioned only dirt. But I kept on hearing ashes, heard phoenix. And from that day, I looked around that room because we always need to be present where we're at. And the present part for me was to see that this room was a women's conference and all of these things are connected to where we are. And I had, like I said, 2 young daughters, 3 and 1. And with that 3 and 1, man, I wanted my girls to aspire to be in a room like this with high energy women who knew that they were leaders and wanted to be leaders. So I had to be the dad that they needed to get there. That doesn't mean anybody else wasn't going to be part of it. It meant that I was going to be the leader and the dad that I need, more important than any leader in our lives. The most important leadership we have is our family. And we start small, and those really, really sound powerful, but it really is because that's where the impact is. Impacts aren't always generational, impacts aren't always a community. You start with a small opportunity. And that's one of the things I eventually learned is the small opportunities lead to so many more bigger opportunities. When we do those things, that becomes a Phoenix moment. When we make those decisions for ourselves, when we think we can't walk any further, when it hurts to breathe, what do you do in your own lives? That day, I made a one of the first many decisions that I made was that I was not going to let the story end there. Much like other times in my life where I did have some things, and we'll have some other conversations around that, just as I share what a Phoenix moment means right now. And that's really what that day was for me, that May 11th, 2006, really to celebrate that Phoenix moment and that rise that it really took me to the next level. That from there, I learned so many other things in life. From that moment, it led me on a path so many different ways. And that's what we're going to do is bring on some speakers and they're going to tell you their story. and they might not be the same story. There's no, there's always a value of hearing people's stories, and that's among the things we're going to talk today also about is the value of storytelling. Because one of the other things that I did today, anybody who's already been on some social media knows that I just dropped 12 new podcast episodes. Not only do I teach people about communication, but I also set an example because that's really what takes us to that next level. There's a lot of people in our communities that say they what they do, and they kind of goes back into ghost writing, right? It's all these people who say these things, but then it doesn't happen. It becomes vaporware. And I, hey, I've been guilty of that at times also. Then I needed to find the right mentors. But I wanted to also show people that if I'm going to do it, that's why I did this live. And for anybody who knows, it's also being streamed on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So I learned how to do it. We're always at the point of rising ourselves to that next level. And I'm not sure what everybody's doing for their levels and how to rise for themselves. And you can always put things in the chat. I'm also kind of keeping an eye on my chat boards and everything like that. It's a lot of fun. But the great thing is every time we rise to another level, we learn some new things. I wasn't prepared years ago. I didn't have the right mentors years ago. I now have the right mentors and I know what to do now. And that's some of the things we're going to talk about. And so that's what Phoenix Day means to me is the opportunity to rise and to get to that next level. It's not just, we go into our ashes and repeat patterns. We need to break patterns. It's so important to break those patterns in our lives. See what's not working, what is working, or what can work that much more efficiently. And by doing that, that's how we grow and we fly. Because I want to tell you, a lot of people think the phoenix dies. It does not die. It turns into its ashes until you have that God-given spark. So I'd love, anybody, if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, to write the word spark and really have those opportunities to say, I have that spark. Because I want you to always remember that. I forgot that at times in my life, but I always had to come back to my Phoenix story. I always came back to how is this going to help me rise much further and much farther than I had been before. Okay, and nobody's going to want to hear me talk for all this time. So I'm going to bring on, some other speakers. Right now, I have some people in a green room, or at least the rooms in their house for in the Zoom world. Uh, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to introduce them, as I know each one of these people, and they all have some great stories, and they're some great people, and they're in no specific order. Because anybody who knows me knows that I don't plan out that well. I've been doing a lot of things. I've been trying to get my YouTube channel up, so I hope you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, um, and try to get this all together. As in the middle of my daughter's graduation this weekend, where I did my biggest thing is I was a dad. And like I said, that's where we started the story. Is this little 3-year-old girl? There's now a 23-year-old girl who is a college graduate and starting her life. And if I keep talking too much about it, I might even tear up again. I don't know how that happens, but it really does happen because that was one of my Phoenix moments. Also, that first moment when you hold on to that child. There's a story in this book behind me, which was my first book that I ever wrote by myself. And it's that moment, our first heartbeats are the heartbeats that we hear from our mother. And it starts our journey. And eventually we find our paths and we should continue to soar. And that's really what I want to talk to you about is all the soaring. And that's what the Phoenix is. So none of the speakers are ready, and they're probably all racing their hearts a little bit. But what I'm going to do is this gentleman, Tarmarku, is going to be our first speaker. And the reason why, well, there's a lot of reasons why each one of them could have been the number one speaker. But Tom is actually one of the people who, during the pandemic, I think we were on the phone almost every night. He lives in San Francisco, so there's a time difference, and he helped me personally in so many different ways with my writing, my thinking, and all the other things that go along with that. So it's really powerful. and I knew he was really excited. He's been practicing and rehearsing, which is something that I probably need to get better at. He always gives me a hard time about, but in a friendly way. So I'm going to bring up Tom right now. And Tom, would you like to come on, introduce yourself, and then you can get started, and we'll all work it out.
I'm right here. And am I easily heard?
You are easily heard, sir.
Okay. Well, terrific. Well, well, you're my brother from another mother. So I'm so glad to be here and to support you and to celebrate you and your Phoenix Day. And when you told me about there's an opportunity to share my ashes to Phoenix Rising story, uh, this is what arrived. So I think many of us can imagine a time where a little being comes into our life, a little furry being. And that could be a puppy or a kitten. And in my case, it was a kitten. And my sweetheart, she named the little kitten Magic. So magic brings magic to our life. Oh, I see some nodding heads right there. You're with me. So, little Magic. Oh, what a glorious little one, little furry friend, furry family member, because we don't have children. So, you know what happens with couples that don't have children? They end up pet parents. And so we have this glorious little being, and I never been in this situation before, 16 years ago. And so I said, well, I had this notion. I said, no cat in the bed. Well, 10 o'clock that night, the cat is asleep between my ankles on the bed. And I realized that, oh, you're now King Kitten, and I got to get up to go to work tomorrow, but I will just sleep this way with the kitten asleep between my ankles. And so it was an opportunity for my heart to open up to this little furry friend. And what a glorious opportunity to open. And so then that's the glory part. But the ashes part is not too long ago, my little one, his health faltered. I learned how to give him insulin shots. He had diabetes. And so he's 16 years old. He's faltering. I go on location. I'm working. And my sweetheart takes him to the vet. Now, if I knew that he was going to go to the vet and not leave the vet office that day, I would have hugged him that morning before I went off. And so the thing is that I had to give little Magic a gift of compassion, which is I wasn't going to be back for 48 hours. We're not going to let the little one suffer for 48 hours. And so his last breath was in the arms of my sweetheart. And so, and earlier, Dave, you talked about tears. I might get into my tears too, because this is our little one for 16 years. And so from the ashes of that grief, and I cried so much my face hurt. And she cried so much her eyes got all red and swollen. So the thing is, when we lose a family member and grief, there's a possibility. The first gift was for me to make the decision of gift of compassion, to let him go and not wait so that I could see him 40 hours late, 48 hours later. The next gift was that I had a shift inside. Now, I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and I'm also a filmmaker. And so I made a film called Why AI. That is the question why, and then AI is an artificial intelligence. And I was going to expand this 8-minute film, and I was going to have the character I play with a bunch of autographical parts in it in the film. I was going to have him overcome some stuff about bad actions of his father. But I had to let go of magic, and I could let go of having to tell the story about the bad actions of my father. So I decided that I would let that go. And as I was talking to a dear friend, a notion came to me that I hadn't really experienced before. I'm free. So when I decided to let go of telling that story, when I decided to let go of having to live and when you make a film, you're editing, you're just dwelling in that space of upset and fear from the past and things like that. But I got from the experience of having to let go of magic the opportunity to let go of the bad actions of my father. So I went from the ashes of grief to the phoenix rising of I'm free. And that's my experience to share with you there, all the folks here. And I really wanted to participate and celebrate with you, Dave, and all the folks here. So may our ashes lead us to the phoenix rising of freedom. And so, anyway, I'm Tom Marcoux, and you can find me at getthebigyes.com. And one little bit tidbit here's trivia. If you look on Amazon, you'll see I've written 56 books. If you look on Audible, you'll see 40 books. So, uh, educator, writer, filmmaker. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Tom. I really appreciate your time, and I know with the
Thank you.
time difference and all the different things that you're working on, I know your time is limited. So I really appreciate that fact that you came on and shared that story about magic. And I wanted to start off with the idea of it doesn't have to be a life-changing event. It doesn't have to be, it's what you experience. Because I know when I was a recovery advocate, I know there's a lot of things that people had dealt with, or even things that I deal with. You know, I remember sitting in a room and hearing some things and going, man, my life wasn't so bad. It was bad for me to go through, but comparatively speaking, and we all have to remember that part of what we go through is how it feels for us. And while somebody might be going through something that much worse, which is a conversation I had earlier today with somebody, there is worse than maybe what you're dealing with. I remember working in a job where we were working in outdoor cleaning, and somebody was having a party, and they were like, "Oh my God, it's going to rain. This is the worst thing ever." I'm sure because she was having a party coming over, that might have felt like the worst thing ever. And many of us might say that was the worst thing ever. But you might have also said, what is she worried about? It all is perspective. And, nothing's as bad to you until it happens to you. Just recently, for those who know, I had a little heart condition within the past month. Unexpectedly, I needed to have a stent that I talk about. So please, everybody, the most important thing is take care of your health. And, I didn't know what I didn't know, but now that I know, it becomes a different decision. And I want you to all participate in doing exactly what you need to do to take care of yourself. Recognize, because once people said to me after that procedure, they were like, "Well, it's only one stent. I have four, I have nine, I have this." And I said, "Well, guess what? One, it's not a competition. You win. I'm not happy to be in this club. When I started going to the rehab and I start looking at all the other men, either older or my age, who are around, I'm like, this is not the club that I needed or wanted to be part of, but it's a club that I am part of. Uh, I made the choices, and that's one of the things. Make the choices that you think are best for yourself, but do put your health a little bit more advanced. I'm glad and I'm blessed to have that opportunity to now do go forward, and now everything becomes more of a choice. It's more of me what I need to do versus I know I'll get to that point when it is. Make health your priority. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox. And as I get off my soapbox, what I'm going to do is I want to bring on our next speaker. I really just met Heather recently, and we got to know, and it's one of those conversations that we connected right away. We were, going to see, because we are on podcasts and have all those things. But then you get to meet people and you're like, I know there's a bigger purpose. And that's why what I said, well, if you have, some time next Monday, come on down. She says, but I also want to see some of the other speakers. And that told me a lot about Heather, a lot more than just, oh, I get to speak on a stage or I get to speak my thing. She asked me lots of questions about what type of speech. So I can't wait because I know she's been working really hard for it and I don't want to make any further delays about it. Heather, I'm going to bring you on up and I can't wait to hear your speech.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much, David. I'm truly honored to be here as part of this. I Part of my mission in life is to help people, just help people. I want to serve people. So anytime I have that opportunity, I will jump on it, and connection is so important to me. So connecting with other people that can share and grow together with is just everything. So I appreciate being here. So, hi, friends. My name is Heather McNally. I am an identity and alignment activator. And before I share my story with you, I'm just going to share a tiny bit about the phoenix. The phoenix is that mythical bird that at the end of its life bursts into flames. And from those ashes, it rises again, reborn, stronger, wiser, and transformed. And I think that symbolism has followed me throughout my life because unfortunately, sometimes you're in situations where life burns us down before we rise back up. And sometimes we walk through pain, trauma, heartbreak, fear, different experiences that make us believe that we've been destroyed. But what if that fire isn't the end of the story? What if it's the beginning of your becoming? So, this is my Phoenix story, and I'm going to tell you a little bit, and I hope it doesn't make anybody upset, but this is an experience that I had, and it was kind of typical in my household. So, picture me at 8 years old, curled up on my bed and crying. Downstairs, the yelling was continuing. My mom's voice was like sharp and pleading, my father's booming and relentless. I had been right in the middle of that fight. The screaming, the chaos, object slamming, and rage filling every corner of the house. So I ran upstairs into my room, my safe place. I closed the door behind me and thought maybe if I was just quiet enough, just still enough, he would forget that I existed. But then I hear his voice screaming, "Get down here right now." And my whole body just froze and tensed up. Maybe if I didn't move, I could somehow disappear. And then I hear, "Now." I know that voice and I know what happens when I don't listen. So I stood up, shaking so badly I'm not sure my legs are going to hold me. And I walk towards the stairs and I hear, "Hurry up." So I go down slowly, trying to delay the moment that I know is coming. And there he is, my father, my monster, towering over me, sweating, furious, screaming at me that I'm not close enough and get right down into the step in front of him. And so I took that final step. And inches away from him, he's red and dripping with sweat and breathing heavy. And every time he screams at me, flecks of spit are falling onto my face. But I'm too scared to wipe them away. And then I hear it. "You know this is all your fault, don't you?" And I couldn't answer. So my whole body's trembling. "Don't you?" My lips part, nothing comes out. And I hear, "Stop crying." And I can't. The tears just kept falling silently as his fists were clenching and unclenching beside me. And then he said the words that had come out many times and shaped me for years. "You know that if your mother and I get divorced, it's your fault, don't you?" And in that moment, I feel trapped because I know the moment. I've been there before. And if I say no, the beating's coming. And if I say yes, it'll be screaming. I just want it to stop. So I say yes. And he screams that he can't hear me. So I have to say it louder to make him happy. And in that moment, I believed it. I believed that I was that problem causing them to fight, that I was too much, that I was also not enough, and that I was responsible for the pain around me. I want to say, I hope this story isn't your story. I really do. Beliefs come at us at such a young age, and not always because someone's hurting you. They come at you by the age of 7 years old before your brain is fully formed. Those beliefs didn't stay in that moment, though. They settled into me. They became the lens through which I saw myself, the world, and what I believed I was allowed to be. They became my identity. What I understand now is this: when moments like that happen, especially repeatedly, your brain and your nervous system are just trying to protect you, to keep you safe. Your brain is wired for survival, not happiness, not joy. So it creates these belief systems and patterns to help you make sense of that pain and navigate the world around you. And over time, those patterns become automatic. They're your belief systems. It's not because they're true, it's because they became familiar, they became habits. And many of us are just walking through this life living from those unconscious patterns that we never chose. I remember one moment, I was about 25 years old, and a friend asked me if I wanted to go to a concert. Now, I want you to understand that at this point, I'm married, I have my own home, I'm working and paying, and I said, no, I can't. And something hit me like a brick in the face. It was like, I just said I can't. And the truth was, I could have gone. Like I said, I'm married. I've got to make my own money. I wanted to go. And it was like, what? My belief system answered for me. It was that unconscious patterning that said, no, you can't. I became that girl who can't. That was the first moment that I truly realized that it wasn't my voice speaking for me. It was conditioning, it was fear, it was survival. And that awareness literally changes everything in your life. Because once you begin to recognize the patterns that are running your life, you finally have the power to choose differently. And for me, that became the beginning of my rising. Not all at once, not like magic. There's no such thing as perfection. It wasn't perfectly, but slowly, every time I became aware of something, I got to make a choice. So I began questioning the beliefs that I had always accepted as truth, things that came up that I would automatically go to say. And I began learning more about psychology, human behavior, the nervous system, brain science, and how it works, and identities based on our experiences. And what I realized was life changing. Just because something shaped you does not mean it gets to define you. At first, change can feel so uncomfortable because when you've been spending all your life surviving in a certain way, even healthy change can feel unfamiliar, and our brain doesn't want unfamiliar. But slowly, I started making different choices, speaking up more, trusting myself more, paying attention to those thoughts that were literally automatically running my mind. And over time, I realized that I wasn't becoming someone new. I was reconnecting with the version of myself that had been buried underneath survival and fear and conditioning. And then I met my husband, Dan. And for the first time in my life, I experienced something I didn't even know how to name: safety. Not perfection, not some fairy tale romance, but consistency, patience, acceptance, true, real love. And when someone loves you in a healthy way after you've spent years believing that love had to be earned and you still didn't get it, it changes you. Sorry for my dogs barking if you can hear it. So much of my life, I believed that the fire I had experienced had ruined me. But slowly I began to understand something different. The fire had actually shaped me. And now I got to decide what would rise from that fire. So then I became a mom, and becoming a parent changed everything because I realized I got to stop the cycle of abuse. I had a choice: repeat what I knew or choose differently. And oh boy, did I choose differently. Not perfectly, but very intentionally. I learned to pause instead of react, to apologize when I should, to regulate myself, and to create safety instead of fear. And today, when I look at my two boys who are now turning 24 and 20, I feel overwhelming pride. Not because our family is perfect, but because it's safe. It's connected. We have honest conversations. It's real. They know that they're loved, that they matter, that they get to use their voices, and that they get to be emotionally intelligent. And every time they call me just to talk or text me, every time I get to see them, it's like I know that they feel that I'm here fully for whatever they have to say. And then I think to myself, I broke the cycle. And maybe that's what a phoenix rise really is. Not pretending the fire never happened, but choosing something different because of it. Life gave me one more opportunity out of many to rise when my mother became terminally ill. During that time, I became not only her daughter, her caretaker, but also her advocate. I learned to trust my instincts, to speak up to everybody, to stop staying quiet and playing small when something didn't feel right. And through that experience, I realized something even more important. I have a voice, and I learned that life is short, connection matters. We don't get unlimited time here to become who we're meant to be. And I realized I wasn't meant to stay quiet anymore. A few years ago, while I was in Ireland, I got a phoenix tattoo, and I will show you. And it wasn't about getting a tattoo. It was about honoring my story. I do have it on my arm here. And it was about honoring my story because at that point, I finally understood something I hadn't understood for most of my life. I wasn't weak because I had been through hard things. I was strong because I had risen through them and learned from them. That phoenix became a symbol of everything I had survived, but even more importantly, everything I had chosen to become. And when I look at that tattoo now, which is on my forearm, I see it all the time. I don't see pain. I see resilience, grit, choice, growth, transformation. I see the woman who stopped letting the fire define her and started allowing it to refine her. And that is why I do what I do now as a essentially a life coach, but I call myself a life activator. I use my voice through my podcast that's called Life Beyond BS, a book that I was able to author, my speaking and coaching work with others to help people recognize those unconscious patterns and the belief systems that I call the BS, quietly shaping their lives. Because so many people are walking around believing that they're stuck when really they're living from conditioning they never consciously chose. And the moment you become aware of those patterns, everything can begin to change. Not overnight, not perfectly, but intentionally, choice by choice. Because your power is not in perfection. Your power is in awareness, it's in truth. It's in realizing that no matter what shaped you, what fire you've been through, you still have the ability to choose differently. And maybe that is where your own Phoenix Rise begins. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Heather. That was amazing. And it's one of the things. This is my first experience to do a live and all of these things. The way you explained the Phoenix, I wanted that. I at times assume, but man, you just gave it not only with your explanation, your story was so powerful that, I'm sure that there's many people. I know there's parts of me that, knew that type of feeling that you had explained. So thank you so much. And really, I highly recommend everybody to reach out to Heather if you want. All these people who are on the stage are people who I really know, and I hope you meet them if they're not somebody who's in your circle. That's the really important part of what we do is putting our people in our circle with intentions. A lot of this that we do, it's intentional. If you don't believe you have a spark, like when I said this, the phoenix rises from a spark from the universe, God, whatever that means to you, that's the reason why I didn't want to get up when after a suicide attempt. I knew how to help people. I just didn't want help at a point, right? And we don't use our own resources. And that is one of the biggest things that sometimes happens is not using our resources. And throughout life, we find resources, um, and all the other pieces to that. It's by using your resources, finding what resources might have worked well when you were younger or in a different situation than where you are today. It's that growth that really takes us to that next level. And that's why I decided to do today this live that we're going to turn into a regular thing. We're going to actually turn it into a lot of things because that's the value that we have with everything. Um, and the value is by having that community. Now, one of the communities that I belong to, the Unleashed, it's a mastermind, but it's really more family. They talk about family, and I've become really close with most people within that community. But everybody knows that I'm an author, not because I say so, but because I spend the time to write books. And, within the next few weeks, where I'm going to have had 9 solo books published, including a bunch of compilations. A few of these are being released this week just because timing, we all want to do it on our own timing, but God has its own timing and what we want to do to devote that. But I want to pick up one of the books. I'm going to turn off my uh, background for a second, just because I want to kind of talk about this one book right now. Uh, Let me see how, of course, Facebook. Just switch. All right, I'm just gonna leave it on. No, I'm not gonna leave it on because you can't see it. Just give me a second. And this is one of those things that trying to talk about. We write books. For those of us who are authors, but we all have stories. I don't know how many of you have actually thought about writing a book. How many of you have thought about the opportunity to be an author? Remembered my story was I remember being in elementary school and they were talking about authors, and we had to read this thing about what an author does, how they do it. And I was so excited I was like, oh my God. There we go. There we go. Go turn it off. There we go. So this book is actually a book that I want to talk about. It's a little blurry, still a little blurry. There we go. Stronger in the Twist, The Unleashed. Now, the book is not about that mastermind. The book is really actually about a lot of things, but it is about a community. It's about people who put together a bunch of different things and how they just look out for each other. Family is not always blood. My father used to tell me that because we didn't have a close relationship with a lot of my family at that time. But family isn't about blood because we get to choose, and chosen families are so important. And one of my chosen families, uh, they have a charity called the Joseph P. Faber Memorial Foundation. And the proceeds of that book, when it gets launched, is all going to go, at least anything that comes into me, is going to go to that organization. That organization really means a lot to me. Not only the people in the organization who mean a tremendous amount to me, but it's the mission of the organization is to end suicide. And for anybody who knows, has experienced that feeling, and most of us have had that feeling at some point in our lives, to I want the pain to end. I don't want to be dealing with this anymore. I'm done. That was a famous line that my mom and my dad used to throw around. I'm done. I'm done. And anybody knows me, I've used that words and I try to use it a lot less because while I'm done, that's a catchphrase for me saying it's too heavy for me. It's too heavy for me right now, and I have to figure out. I've stopped books. That's why I have as many books. I have a lot of books more in the on my computer. And when I was sitting in the ER recently, I was like, wow, all those times I have some books that I think people would enjoy to read the stories. And I'm guarantee you all of you have stories as well within you that need to get out, but you might not have been able to find a way to do that. Those are the people I'd want to talk to. I want to know why. Because one of the other stories that I'm going to tell you is, what do we do with those opportunities to kind of lift ourselves up? What do we do with those stories that we have out there that need to be out there, that need to be told to somebody else? When we look at the cemetery, all the world's riches and stories are still there in many cases. People have been afraid to just take that next level into telling the stories the way they need to be told. And remember, it's your story. You get to have the power of your story, your perspective through the story. So that book that I was talking about, with the twist, it's about a community, the family who needed to fight against people who saw things differently, who thought, who thinks, that's good, but who thought really that the only way to fix things is in a nice, neat bow. And as we know, as Heather told us, and how everybody's night, nice, neat bow, really it isn't always nice and neat, but it's a bow that others can't see what the outside looks like. They only know from the inside. And the inside is so important. The inside of stories, the inside of people who are smiling on the outside, but hurting on the inside. And that goes back to that Phoenix moment. There was a lot of people who didn't know how much pain that I went through. And I'm sure a lot of you also might have felt that way. So the next story we're going to bring out is, one of the people that I had met over the years. Uh, I do a lot of charity work, and through that charity work, you put yourself in situations where you get to know people. It's kind of they call it a little bit. I will use a Yiddish word, menschkeit. It's between men. It's between people. It doesn't have to be men, but it's between people. That real special part of what we do together, what you do to help communities, putting your hand up and raising it, being a leader in that way. And so when I first started talking about Phoenix Day, one of the first people who raised his hand was my friend Ed Paley. And Ed has done so much in his life. He was one of the, I don't remember the year, and Ed will tell us, the top therapist, as a top social worker in Nassau County. So he's a leader. He's always been a leader. As far as I know him, I met him through the Knights of Pythias, which is a brotherhood of people who want to do a bunch of charity work, who want to do philanthropy, and he does. Ed, as he's gone throughout life, has always given more and tried to give up. Ed has an amazing story, and we're going to work on getting Ed's book out. Hint, 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 sir. But we're gonna, because we all have a story and a reason why we do what we do. So I'm gonna bring up Ed, and Ed, let's see if the audio. If not, we can pull you back just to let you know. So don't worry if it's gonna be there, and then we'll still get you on. Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, okay, you gotta unmute yourself first, and then I'm gonna send you on up.
Ready?
You good?
Okay. So first of all, I want to thank you, David, for allowing me to tell my story. And I'm glad that 20 years ago you made the decision to live and not to die, because you have accomplished so much. And I think Tom is gone, but to hear his story, and Heather, to hear your story, so it's an honor to be with all of you. So one of the worst days of my life, and you know what? I'm glad that I have the ability to cry. And so if I cry, it's a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness. So January 5th, 1959, my father died of a heart attack. January 5th was probably one of the worst days of my life. I knew of no one who had lost a parent. I've been a clinical social worker for 55 years. I presented all over the country on grief and trauma. I've studied with the best people in this country. I've dedicated my life to helping people deal with loss, and not just the death of a loved one, the death of an animal, but there's all kinds of losses. You lose your hair, you get divorced, you have your favorite teacher, and you go on to the next grade, and you may never see that teacher again. There were no bereavement books in 1959. There were no bereavement groups. My father died in the VA hospital in the Bronx of a heart attack, but not one social worker, and I'm sure there were social workers, offered to be of help. Going to my father's funeral, people would say, "You're now the man of the family." I was no more of a man at 10 and a half than I was at 13 when I was bar mitzvah. 3 months after my father died, my dad was 52, my mom was 38, left a widow at 38 with 4 children from 3 months to 12 years of age. 3 months after my dad died, we're coming from the dock to get the bus to go home. I lived in middle-class projects in the Bronx. My younger brother and I was with her. A car went through the light, hit my mother. She spent 6 months in the hospital. My maternal grandmother, I never knew my father's parents came to take care of us. I came to appreciate and love my grandmother. But I would ask her, I was in 5th grade, I would say, "Nanny, could I have 15 cents? Believe it, at one time, pizza was 15 cents. Can I have 15 cents to go out with my friends after school?" And she was a product of depression, so she wouldn't give it. She would say to me, "I'm going to have Uncle Melvin," that was my mother's older brother, her son, "come and discipline you." I have always had excellent verbal skills. And I said, if your son comes and touches me, I'll kill him. No one ever asked me, how am I doing? Teachers would say they were sorry, but no one. I was an A student. So let's go to 9th grade. Christmas 1958. The phone rings right before Christmas. My mother says, "Someone wants to speak to you." I get on. He says, "My name is Mr. Soar. I'm a social worker at Jacoby Hospital. I've been seeing your mother. And you better come tonight to the emergency room to be admitted to the psychiatric unit." My mother he convinced my mother to make me a ward of the court. This is before legal law guardians. I get off the phone. My mother says, "Edward, you want dinner?" I said, "You got to be effing kidding." So I didn't want the police coming, so we take a cab to Jacoby emergency. The psychiatrist on duty gave me a mental status. He saw I was oriented. He said, "Edward, you don't belong here, but I've been told that I have to admit you." They didn't separate adolescents and children from the adults. I was the only one that was allowed to go to school on the outside. I couldn't tell. How do you tell your friends at night you go back to a so-called crazy unit? Finally, we have a family meeting. I wanted my own therapist, but they decide we're going to do family therapy with this guy, Soar. I said, it's not going to work. I had 3 siblings. 2 have since died. My older sister was a sociopath. She was involved in the mafia. She went to jail for a year for forging checks. And my younger brother, if he had to die, that he died in 2019 of brain cancer before COVID. So we have the family meetings. I tell this guy, Soar, that I was taking the test for Bronx High School of Science, which is a special school. You have to pass the test. And he said, "You're not going to make it." So I said to him, "F you." I said, "Would you say that to your 2 kids?" His picture. And I said, "I'm not coming back here." I wound up eventually being sent back to Jacoby a second time. Bronx State Mental Hospital wasn't built yet. They were sending all these kids who weren't crazy kids. I don't even like the term crazy. to Rockland State Mental Hospital in Orangeburg, New York. And that's where I spent my 15th birthday. I was put on Thorazine. I was never psychotic. I was never delusional. I was a boy who was grieving the death of my father. It usually took 2 or 3 weeks to be assigned to another unit. I was assigned to an open unit in 5 days. I encountered anti-Semitism from the other kids. The rabbi who came to me and said, Edward, I know you were bar mitzvahed, but there are 2 kids here who are going to be 13. Would you be bar mitzvahed again? And, you know, for some reason in the Jewish religion at 82, you can have an adult bar mitzvah, be bar mitzvah a second time. Well, I told my rabbi years ago when I told him my story, I said, I know I'm going to heaven when my time is up because I already had my second bar mitzvah. When I came out of Rockland, I went to Bronx Aftercare, and I was assigned a social worker, Jennifer Clark, who said to me, Edward, I don't know what happened here. You should have never went away. You will never go away again. I don't know why they put you on medication. You will never take medication again. She said, Edward, has anyone helped you to deal with your father's death? I said, no. She said, I will. She said, I believe in you. And no matter what your mother says when you express your feelings, you will never go away again. I have asthma since I'm 2.5. So the kids were told, because I went in May, the kids were told, and junior high went up to 9th grade, the kids were told, Eddie went to the asthma home in Denver for the summer. So when I came out, they didn't call me Crazy Eddie. Eddie, how's your asthma? I've always been street smart. I'm a boy from the Bronx. I've always been quick thinking on my feet. I went on to be elected boy leader of the senior class, vice president of the Honor Society. I graduated the only student in a class of 700, 100% character rating. I graduated with 10 awards. Jennifer Clark and the social worker that I saw after her came to my graduation, 1966, gave me a attaché case that I still have in the basement with my initials. I was on stage because I was the boy leader. They said, Mrs. Paley, Mrs. Riegelhoff, look at your son and grandson. Look at what Edward has accomplished. I have worked hard to be who I am. I've been married 45 years, and my wife says I'm the most giving person she's ever met. You know, by right, I should be a self-centered, narcissistic, borderline. I never got involved in alcohol abuse. I never got involved in drugs. I worked real hard to be different than my siblings and my mother. I've had some good therapy, but here's what I say to people. I did the hard work. The journey goes on. The journey never stops. In 1984, my son was born, my only child, Justin, who's 40. I still miss my father on Father's Day, and I speak to him every day when I do my prayer ritual after my shower. But to be a father means a great deal to me. And I've raised a good son. So, and David has helped me and will continue. I'm writing a book. I've been writing it for 50 years. My book is called The Boy from the Bronx, a story of hope and triumph over tragedy. I have chosen to let my phoenix rise every day. I only surround myself with good people. I don't have time for the shit. I care deeply about people. My mother back then couldn't get, even back then, big brothers for my brother and I. So when I became 21, I became a big brother. When I came out to Long Island to work, I started getting kids, big brothers, big sisters. I then said, how does one become a board member? And for 10 years now, I'm on the advisory board of the Ronald McDonald House of Long Island. Giving back for me means a great deal. And so it's an honor to meet you all, to be in your presence, and to hear your stories. And I consider David a friend, a colleague, a mentor, and have great respect for him. So when I saw him put this up, I immediately responded and asked if I could be part of this today. I appreciate you listening, to my story. Everyone has their story, but I haven't met anyone, and I'm no better than anyone, who went through what I went through and became a highly respected clinical social worker who has helped kids as young as 4 and people as old as 98, because my humanity, my compassion, my ability to cry, my ability, the last thing I want to say. So I forget how old I was. But I felt I had no one. And I cut myself. I didn't want to die. I'm also very involved in the American Suicide Foundation for Prevention. I did not want to die. I was crying out for help. But it wasn't until I met Jennifer Clark, who was a true social worker, who saw the real Edward, who allowed me to, resolve death. I met Cooper Ross years ago. What you do is you reconcile it. There's always going to be an opening in my heart, mourning the death of my father. And like I said, I speak to my father, Jack, every single day. And I do my prayer ritual. But I say, and I'll end with this, I'm not ready to join any of you. Have a good day in heaven. And in about 15 years, in terms, we'll speak if I'm ready to join. I believe there's a heaven. I believe there's purgatory. I know when my time is up, that God is going to welcome me to heaven. I'll be reunited with all my love. So my Phoenix, I was not going to let the ashes and these MFs destroy who Edward Ira Paley was and is. I appreciate you listening.
Thanks so much, Ed. I really appreciate that. And, I really know how much of this comes directly from your heart. And it means so much to me that you're able to share that and be part of that. And, there's a saying that we've heard, anybody who's watched Schindler's List, but it comes from the Talmud. If you save one person in your life, then you can save the world. You save the world. So, Ed, I know really the heart that you have and who you really put it all in for your clients, for the people that you don't even know, the opportunities, the charity. You give it all out. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you today to come on down and speak and tell a little bit of your story. And what's great is we had to try to train, see if we could convert this to the transcript, and then there you go. You have a little more of your book written than you had. Okay, so that's the real tricks also that I want to talk with everybody is it's easy to do. One of the books that I wrote that I read growing up was Writing Down the Bones. And it's about stories that you don't have to tell anybody. I'm not telling you everything belongs in a book or everything belongs to the world, but your story belongs to you. And that's the message I want you to have. Because when I did ask Ed about the book that I keep teasing him about, I said, why does everybody need to know your story? He goes, everybody doesn't need to know my story. My family needs to know my story. And while they might have heard it from me, we have to remember that we're here for 2 generations. We're not only here for the generation of us being here, we're here to pay on the story about generations before us, right? Our grandparents, our parents, and oftentimes. But then there's also the generations afterwards. And unless we do things that really have impact larger than ourselves, that legacy comes shorter. One of the things, part of that foundation, when I talk to them, not on my watch, the first time that I heard that is so we want to keep telling our stories. It's a little bit easier right now to tell our stories and have the legacy go on to the extent that somebody wants to search for our names in the future. And it's not only about searching the legacy, it's telling stories like this and showing that we get up out of the ashes. So that day 20 years ago, I didn't try to commit suicide. I actually just made a decision that I was going to move forward. 6 years ago, I did try to attempt suicide because I didn't want it. And it was one of those situations where I talk about that I just didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. I was told that I was hurting too many people, and I didn't want to hurt. That's not who I am. Now, I make mistakes, and I'm probably going to make a lot more mistakes going forward. A lot of people thought this was going to be a mistake, and it's been really wonderful. I think and we're not even halfway there yet. The beauty of all of this is that we rise out of the ashes. That if you are hearing this story, there's a phoenix within you. Les Brown has a comment that says sometimes God acts anonymously through us. So that's why I don't want to turn away anybody from speaking. I want to give them that opportunity because it's not my message. Your message is yours, but somebody needs to hear your message. I knew that uh, after my TEDx talk. I did a TEDx talk. Everybody aspires that. In the morning of that TEDx talk, I was prepared. I was ready to nail it. But then I also realized that was the first time that I was going to talk about my suicide attempt. And then I survived, obviously, because you were hearing me on a TEDx talk. But the real power behind it was much more than that I survived. But I also, sometimes the world gets a little heavy. I was like, oh my God, now everybody's going to know my story. And at that time, I looked at it. If you watch the video, I'm not happy with the performance, but where I'm going with it, you don't know who your message is going to be. So that performance that I don't necessarily like because I am a better speaker. Not only have I grown in the 6 years, 5 years that it's been out, well, actually 6 years, I guess this year, um, that not only have I personally grown in my speaking ability and everything like that, but that's not the win of what I could do. The win for me is that I had 11 families when I was really pushing out the TEDx at that time, nine of which people were going to attempt suicide. And they just wanted to hear from somebody. I don't know, because I've been in a lot of communities that I was a recovery coach. I was a recovery advocate, a certified peer recovery advocate. So I was in a lot of communities where people were struggling with the truths of life. And I had nine people reach out to me to talk to me about it, and we were able to get them help. I know I'm not a therapist. I don't claim to be one, but I was able to guide them to get the right assistance. And in those same people, there was two other people, two other families who reached out to me, who needed to have some sort of grace on the families members who actually were successful. Statistically feeling, that's really where it goes. 85% of people who attempt suicide are unsuccessful. So I'm not about to have people raise their hand if you attempted suicide. I hope you get help if you need it. There are organizations like the Joseph P. Faber Memorial Foundation out there who will raise your hand and have licensed therapists on there. There are ways to have assistance, and I don't want that to ever be forgotten and be part of that story. And part of that story really goes back to what we do with our story and how we look for the right people to help us share our story. Now, the next speaker I want to bring on is my friend Roxy, because what she does, she has a wonderful community helping people in disability in the disability world, and she pushes herself so hard. And recently, actually, so I've heard her speak many times, and she always has something of value to add. So I can't wait to see what value she's going to add, because she also raised her hand rather quickly. It was like, hey, what do I have to do? And offered to help me which is hard for me to allow people to help me. But I want to bring up Roxy right now. So Roxy, come on up, please, and I'll pin you up. Um,
Good evening, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you all over the world. David, what an honor to be here today at the Phoenix Day. I'm Roxy B. Rocker, and I do a couple of things. I have a wellness center, a little baby one, but it's still a wellness center. And I'll share part of this in the story. I became a licensed massage therapist because most of the world likes to tell people with disabilities, no! Well, I don't really listen very well to that no because I want more. Now, I'm gonna go back a little bit. My my life was kind of similar to Heather's, where there was a lot of yelling and a lot of screaming and a lot of chaos. And New York. Well, I think we all learned to be a little chaotic from New York. My dad used to yell a lot, and I remember all the secrets. We were Jewish, but I also heard a lot of shh, we don't talk about these things. I don't really know what happened, but my dad was very Jewish. My grandmother is very Jewish, but my mother's side of the family was Jewish, but it was always, we don't talk about these things. But I don't really know what that meant. And I also heard children should be seen and not heard. Well, I was a child with a disability. They found out when I was about 3.5 to 4 years old that I had a disability. I needed a heel lift that thick. So guess who's being raced off to the cobbler to get shoes made? Well, I was called Amy back then. Little Amy had to get shoes made. My brother was not a happy camper that I was the sick little girl. So Randy, that special brother of mine, made sure that in that house of the chaos, that I was not welcome. I was not the little sister he wanted. I was pushed down the stairs. I was pushed all around. I even have a cool eye scar on my eye because he pushed his little sister down the stairs quite a few times. I don't know what those parents were doing. I really don't. They were strange people. A lot of yelling, a lot of fighting, a lot of overprotectiveness. Can't eat candy, can't do this, don't play for too long. I remember at some point I listened to a podcast my brother did before podcasts were like the thing, and I was laughing so hard because he was talking about childhood moments, and I'm sitting there going, "What the hell family was he talking about?" Because he's a lion boy. Because that wasn't my family. Scream, yell. Now I do remember going to Mets games and watching the bat boy and girl behind the thing. So that was a good memory. Most of them weren't. They were crazy people that I had to live in that house with a lot of screaming. And I was kind of a jovial, happy go lucky kind of a girl. Oh, in that house, I don't know. He was scary, she was scary, and he just wanted to be left alone. Daddy, leave me alone. I want to read the book. So life happens. You're a disabled labeled child. You go to kindergarten. All of a sudden, I can't color in the lines. Uh-oh. Something's wrong with her. Uh-oh. Can't color. More. She's not good. She's not normal. So now I've got speech therapy, some kind of dyslexia, some kind of dysgraphia. Oh, and I definitely have dyscalculia because I don't understand those math numbers very well. So I'm labeled all over the place. I got labels from head to toe. And remember, don't forget about that list. I'm even labeled more. So I'm the kid I'm falling down. I'm different, and we got the crazy parents behind me in tow. And the brother, well, oh my goodness. So we now Daddy's losing his cool job that he worked for Givenchy, the clothing line. Oh, wait until I tell you I'm in fashion. my daddy worked for the clothing line, and perfume and alcohol and different things came in the house, but we also could get like Met tickets. But daddy lost that job. Something was happening in the fashion industry in 1970, 80 something, in 80 something, something was happening. So there was changes going on, and that job was ending. So now my mom wants to go follow grandma and grandpa, who we don't talk about the Jewish stuff, to Arizona. So now we have to move. Oh, heaven on a plate. We go to the wild, wild west. I didn't know where I was going. Uh-oh. They got stairs that I got to climb. And these cuckoo people, you know what they put me in? A two-bedroom. We got the boy, the nutty boy, and we got mommy and daddy. And then you got the child that's sick. We have a two-bedroom. Where am I sleeping? From 9 to 16? Cuckoo, cuckoo, mom and dad. I'm yelling at them. I'm going into puberty sometime during all this time, and I'm like, Mom, Dad, can I please like have like a cot in the living room and cover it? Because this is kind of wild. I don't understand what y'all are doing here. Uh-oh. He is growing up. He's got more freedom than I do because she's got to helicopter me and keep the little disabled child in a cage, and I'm hearing her yell, nobody helps, da 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 da. Dad's working all the time. I think he might have actually been working two jobs. So now I have to go to school with the heel lift. Uh-oh. And teachers were already kind of making fun of me because they didn't really understand the learning style. Um, by the time I got into fifth-ish grade, it was a little bit better. I had better teachers. Sixth grade, I got the coolest teacher, Mrs. Hartman, because she had polio. So she liked me. And she was like, wait a minute. Maybe this kid could learn. Maybe we just got to teach her differently. Oh, are you innovative and kind of smart? She was. She was brilliant. Bless her heart. She is no longer on this planet, but God, she was a mother. Oh, she was my mama. She even taught me how to go out to eat and like socialize because Shirley and Aaron, the rockers, they were off their rocker and they would have never, I wouldn't have never known if Mrs. Hartman didn't go take me out for dinners and lunches. And I learned how to socialize because you had to have somebody adopt you. But here's what's fascinating. Talk about the Phoenix. Do you know those kids in the Wild Wild West? They beat me up on the playground over the shoe because I couldn't run very fast. In PE class. PE class. Where, yeah, PE class. I couldn't run very fast. They didn't want to pick me. I'm the weirdo. So don't pick me. And I mean, we're talking like bruises, like beating, fists, everything, the whole 9 yards, right? And I'm crying. I'm all banged up. I'm a mess. But you know what's fascinating? Mrs. Hartman went in front of that classroom and she yelled at those kids and she said, if this ever happens to little Amy again, you all are going into detention and the principal's office because we protect our people. She was talking about community. Look, I don't care how different you are, and I don't care who you are. We are human beings. And we literally have to, we have these things because of these labels that are attached to us. Heather talked about belief systems, but, in my world, these labels come and they just keep spitting out. And, you're not good enough. Why'd you do that? No, you can't have that. What's wrong with you? Are you dumb? Oh, yeah. Multiple teachers told me I was dumb. Thank God for the Mrs. Hartmans of the world because she reminded me how brilliant I was. So, at some point you got to grow up and you got to get yourself through these school systems that are labeling you. And I was also a sick child. I had multiple labels, medical problems, asthma, the whole, you name it. There was a label on me on some medical record. Roxy Rocker had disabilities. Um, and when I got into high school, I remember they wouldn't let me. No. I wanted to go into leadership, and I really wanted to be, well, kind of cool like Edward. He said that he was like the leadership council kid. They said, no, you can't do that. We're not going to have you in student council. That would not be good. You're kind of one of those, R word kids. And I'm like, but I'm kind of smart and I like things and I like service projects. You know, the secret? My mom used to scream and yell all the way down in the neighborhood, where are you? Come on, come on. And so I didn't really want to be home. So I would hide at the neighbors drinking tea. So, what do you else you do? You just go to the neighbor's house and you drink some tea and have some conversation because you're not going to get conversation at your house. So, so I ran off and I didn't do anything bad because, if I did something bad, it would have been worse. But when I went to school and they wouldn't let me become a leader, I decided, well, what if I could? And I looked at my teacher, who was another remarkable one, Tony Klima, who was actually kind of a rebel. And she was from New York too. So her dad was kind of a rebel. And there was this, I said, and I didn't know it at the time, but I'm 14 and a half. And I said, well, I want to go to that government day. So they took me to government day. And I learned about the government and I looked at all these peers of mine that were all my age, that were on the stage, and they were running that kind of event. And I was like, I'm going to do that. So I went back and I said, I want to be on that stage. I'm going to be the first person with a disability because all of the other kids around me, they're like in trouble. They're screwing up. They have no idea. And then I'm like, I want to do service. I want to help human. And I want to be in leadership because I could get somewhere if I'm in leadership, right? You got to learn how to network. You got to learn how to communicate. And you got to learn how to do something if you're going to want to have a better life. Because my mom just sat at home and cried and I had to help her with the penny saver advertising because she couldn't sell a thing. But I needed to, I like to talk. So my, you know, and I had to manipulate her a little bit that said, well, look, if I sell anything or I get these ads for you, you're giving me money so I can go buy my cassettes and my CDs and, my music and my clothes. Cause, I wanted better clothes because they all knew I was poor. So I learned leadership and I got into the mayor's commission on youth. And I was the only one in 1988, 89 with a disability. It was unheard of. And when they wouldn't let me into the student council, I came banging on their door and I said, guess what? You're letting me in now. They're like, what? Why? And I said, you know why? Because you said I can't. And I said, and I did. And I'm now your representative of the Mayor's Youth Commission. They're like, what? And I said, yeah, we're going to learn together now. The kids in the Interact group, which is Rotary, they kicked me out for their senior year. You want to know why? After I was running all the service programs so they could look good on their student high school, whatever, for their college applications. I'm like, honey, I've been doing the service project for 3.5 years. Now you want it? And they're like, yeah, you're going to give it to all of us. I said, ha, 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 you're funny. Go create your own because I'm leaving. I said, I'm done. I said, you've already hurt me enough. You built your whole little team in here. There's no room for me anymore. And I'm crying. I said, do you care? Because you really don't. You guys are horribly mean people. And I got to go. And I mean, and I tried to get a little bit of a voice. I have a much bigger voice now, but I had a little voice then, but you can't do much with people who are going to just continue to hurt you. And they don't understand. That's the whole other thing about the label. Neurodivergent, Down syndrome, autism, none of these words existed. I'm sure Ed would even talk about that. None of these words existed around 1955 to 1989. Those words didn't even exist. So when I'm doing disability advocacy and disability education now, I'm still talking about disability advocacy and disability education. I'm not talking about it from the perspective of being autistic or being learning disabled. I'm talking about it from the ADA. How do you get into the door? What is an assistive technology? I'm talking about it for what we need to be talking about when we talk about disability education. So, I mean, I'm not going to take you through all of the realms of all of it, but here's the thing. I got out of school. I went to college. I'm the only one that graduated in my family. Thank you, God. And I got a degree. I have a sociology background, which makes a lot of sense. I'm an advocate for the disabled. You know, I tried to go into early childhood education, and I'm going to tell you right now that it was never my disability that was the problem. It was the ratios and it was the crazy parents problem. And I couldn't handle it. It was too much. So I wanted to go back, and vocational rehabilitation are programs that help people with disabilities, and they're awesome. If you've never done a vocational rehabilitation program, you should really look into it. They're all over every state, and they help fund either resources or college education for you. And I got to go to college on their dollar. I almost went to graduate school, and that sucked. But I also got my massage degree and certification, and I've been doing continuing ed, and now I'm even getting to do trauma work and somatic work that is like the gift of the Magi, that I never imagined that I would be able to help people through trauma and be able to that's a phoenix rising, because let me just say that now, even in addition to my disability education, I read the background of what these two psychosomatic therapists were going to teach us, and all that I heard was it's God's message. It's God's work. You get to literally put your hand on yourself or others. Now, I'm going to tell you that my crazy brother is still crazy. And over the years, it was always a war field, right? Always anger, frustration, crying, me cursing him out, me being angry. I'm a happy go lucky girl, but you want to piss me off? Have me talk to my mother, may she rest in peace. Or my brother, who ruined even some of the relationship with me and my daddy in the end. But you want me to go crazy? I got to go and talk to those two, because like the mental angst of that is too much. And on a nervous system, on a disabled child who has anxiety, a disabled adult, right? So I literally really have been watching myself, and I've been doing my practice with my somatic work where I'm touching and I'm holding and I'm going behind the ears and I'm, back of the head and on the heart. And sometimes even when I teach it to people, I'm even like smile and giggle. Right? Because what's the giggle going to do? What's the laughter going to do? The laughter is going to take you out of that trauma response. But as I was doing it, I said a comment online that, like, my family don't include me. Well, it's the freaking truth. They all freaked out. Oh, you ruined her birthday. I don't even know my brother-in-law from the half sister. That's a whole other story for another day. And my brother's third wife, yeah. So whatever I said was not even that severe. It was just I'm not included or invited to the event. So nobody wanted the secrets out, because I'm the dirty sister who's disabled. And he said, "Oh, you're the most horrible human being in the world. I don't even understand how you have relationships. I really don't even think you know how to have relationships." And I was like, okay, well, I've had my practice for about 11 years. I don't know how all these people pay me money and continue to come back to me so I can eat and live, but great, I have no idea how to have relationships. Here's the Phoenix rising. I was able to pray over him. I did call him evil. I was able to pray over him. I was able to contain myself and talk about the trauma for the first time. It was the most remarkable feeling in my system to know that I can hold my own safety and my own container, that I didn't have to be so angry at him. And that was freeing. refreshing. He wrote to me before I left. I'm still reeling from it. I'm still having emotions around, am I okay? Do I think that people like me? Will I be chosen? I'm still having emotions. But the container is I can now handle it because I have this somatic resource, somatic tool that I know is working, that I don't have to have this anxiety, that I don't have to have this overwhelmed. And not that tears are bad, but I don't have to cry over every spilt milk anymore because somehow, some way, this somatic intelligence, this divinity knows how to work in your body. Talk about a phoenix rising from somebody who's cried millions and millions of tears over all of the trauma and the just I mean, we could go on for hours about my relationships and things that have happened to me in relationships. That's a whole other essence, and probably, David, a book. And you know but the trauma of this family, the trauma of the pain and the suffering that I went through. The other thing he said, and what really hit me when I felt that phoenix rising, is he said, because I call him my abuser, my evil abuser all the time. He said, "You stupid girl, our father would smack you all the way to the Bronx. And you should deserve it." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I literally tell you all the time that you are my abuser. You are my evil human being in my life. And I do not feel safe or comfortable around you. Every single time we get into this, I tell you that. You just took our dead father, who I loved with all of my heart, and told him to harm me. Now you go and take that back to someone and you tell me who has the behavioral problem, me or somebody else." I said, "Because I do not get to deserve that or take that anymore. I'm taking my power back in a phoenix rising. Burned it down, ashes are, but I'm coming back in a way that's healthier for me."
That
And
is powerful.
I'm loving that piece. Thank you.
That is powerful. Thank you so much, Roxy. Your story has always been powerful, and I really appreciate you sharing that with everybody because we need to hear stories like that really what we've gone through, what people throw at us, and what we then rise and able to lift upon ourselves out of those ashes. So it's not only the things that we get ourselves into, it's the things that people use the labels and the opportunities of those labels to be removed. Right? Words are really horrible. I mean, like I said, I shared that I was called after a suicide attempt. I was called mental case. I was white trash. There's a lot of different words. I could have chose to absorb them rather than release those. One of the R's in my word in your heart. Uh, but it really is going back to the stories, and but I also have lots of good stories. When I was after my suicide attempt, I had to rebuild my life. There was a lot of things going on. And one of the magical things, I believe that the universe does work towards our highest good. And through that highest good, I had this little old lady who lived across from me, Connie, who still actually lives across from me. And Sunday night, I get my meals. Wink, wink. I'm not supposed to tell her family, though her family knows well that she will provide a little extra food for me. Um, so it's one of those things that really becomes much more powerful when we have stories. But there's some people that you can't help. There's so many people who really need that other piece that they won't let you help them. They won't let you show up in their world. And Connie is one of those people. She's like, "I take care of you, don't worry about it." But what I did is because I'm an author, I wrote a book, so I'm gonna just show everybody, a book for Connie, and she knows it's about the makers of moments. And really with the makers of moments, it's about kind of that. I don't know if it happens all over, but I'm sure there's always that one neighbor who pays attention a little bit more than they need to. They want to help everybody. In some of the areas in New York, we might call them, the Italian security system. But it's all those people of really, watching for neighbors, being that community that we were talking about earlier today. And that's the real powerful part. And that's what I want to do is we're going to talk about going forward is some of the community. As we build the community, yes, we're all in different communities, and I can't wait to go back to my communities. For some of you, some of the speakers are from my communities. I actually could find the things that needed to be found. And one of the times you also don't know. It's really weird when you get together as a community, you don't always see everybody in that time frame because there's so many people. You talk to the Roxys, the Kayleys, Heather has not been we've not met her live yet, but it's those there's so many people that you then tie up to. Tim Gillette, our next speaker, actually was one of those people. I didn't get to connect with him when we had the opportunity live, right? Get pulled away here and there and everybody. And he has an amazing story, but he also has an amazing community. The things he does, he's put in a situation that nobody stood up. There was a lot of times. I mean, he builds websites, he does things, but they were like, "Well, you could do that, Tim." And he goes, "Okay, I can." And it's really stepping up as a leader, a person in a community, with the ability to then share that much more. And sharing is so important, right? We teach our kids sharing is caring, but it really goes deeper than caring. And I want to bring up Tim right now and let him start sharing his story so that way we can kind of have the go. So, Tim, it's all yours.
Hello. Thank you guys for attending it today. And I just want to tell you a little bit of a story here and hopefully give you some insight to take through your day and through your year this year. I've had one of those lives where, I thought life was always good. Life was really good. And I was well blessed. And I still believe I am a well blessed man. All right. But I want to put you in the shoes for a moment of some times when life wasn't. First of all, I buried my father at 70 years of age, and that was now 16 years ago. And when my father passed away at 70 years of age, he told people he'd only had ever had two bad days in his life. And I knew that that man, as a child, when I found out later, that that man had one pair of jeans while his sisters got everything. That man some days would get like an apple to eat, and that was it. That was his entire day's meal. And for him to go through everything I found out about him to say he only had two bad days, I really felt bad about complaining about my life and anything I'd ever gone through. But that being said, I want you to picture someone in their early 40s sitting on the couch of their apartment because they've had a bad day. They decided that rather than go out and do something stupid, they were just going to sit there and light candles in the table and shut all the lights off and relax in their home and try to meditate and figure out how the hell did I get here? And while you're sitting there and the candles are burning, you fall asleep. And the candles catch the table on fire, which catch the apartment on fire, which now takes away your home. Now that's literally a place to rise out of the ashes, would you say? That probably would be. But the reason he was sitting there and actually meditating and thinking about this was because before I went to do that, my girlfriend, the woman of my dreams, had just dumped me 3 hours earlier. And she dumped me happened to be, the same week, right? Because the Friday before this happened, I lost my job. With my job came my car. And basically, because of the financial situation I was in, I had $60 in the bank. In a matter of 48 hours, I lost my job, my car, my home, my girlfriend. All gone. As you're standing there watching the smoke come out of that apartment, going, oh, wow, what am I going to do now? What am I going to learn from this lesson, huh? Well, prior to this, 6 months earlier, I'd owned a very nice car wash business. As a matter of fact, 9 months earlier, I bought a brand new Porsche and paid cash for it. And I thought I was on top of the world, but then sold my business and walked away from the industry and started a new job. And I thought it's going to be okay because I got rookie of the month salesperson and I'm going to be okay at this. And then from there, kept going downhill. To have a relationship end, to have a car gone, to have an apartment fire, to lose all your money in less than 6 months, I would say would be a pretty much have your world burned down. I remember there sitting in the parking lot that night, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Not next month, not next year. I didn't even set a 5-year goal at that moment. I was just trying to figure out where the hell am I going to sleep tonight? That's when life starts burning down. People can come back from that, as evidence that I have. And if you are in whatever state you are in, know that you can come back from that, no matter what state that is. And there is going to be steps involved to get you to go there. Because I remember 10 years after that happening, sitting down in a Starbucks with a man who came to my rescue within the following weeks, going, hey, Tim, how can I help? Hey, can we go get you food? Can we get. And looking at me in that devastated moment, sat in a Starbucks with me 10 years later and said, how did you get from where you were then to where you are now? I don't get it. And that man so much, no matter what I could tell him, did not believe me. That he unfriended me and separated from me and won't talk to me anymore because he thought I was lying. That I was putting on some facade, that I went from sitting on a curb watching everything I go to waste to someone who had rebuilt my life and was happy and couldn't sit there and wallow in what had happened. Because I truly chose to rise from whatever it was and move forward. That path wasn't an easy path. Over 10 years, I would go from place to place, room to room, all right, living in the back of a Ford Taurus station wagon, eating the dollar menu at McDonald's. I spent 2 years, the dollar menu at McDonald's was my lunch and dinner every day. 2 meals a day cost me $2.24 with tax for lunch, $2.24 with tax for dinner. Two $1 sandwiches was my meal. And yes, believe it or not, I will still eat McDonald's because I didn't think it was like, I'm never going to touch that again. No, it is a great reminder that, you know what, we can make it through almost anything. Fire didn't destroy me that night, and it won't destroy you if you decide that you can rebuild this. See, that's the first step. You got to decide that you're coming out of this. I tell all the time now, as I've heard it said many times by many motivational speakers, because I've been around the industry for now 16 years, is I knew two things. I knew I was broke at that moment, and I knew one day I wasn't going to be. And that is the start. No matter what the fire has taken from you, that is the start. And just so you think that I'm telling you this story, I'm going to sit here and say, hey, me all good now, me doing great. No, Saturday night, my wife and I had to rip apart our spare bathroom because of a huge water leak, and we're given an impromptu remodel the bathroom this weekend, and we've got to do it fast because our daughter and my grandson need that bathroom. Otherwise, they're coming through our bedroom every day to go use the other bathroom in the house. So to think that if I've got life perfect, trust me, I don't. And the reason we had to do the impromptu is because we didn't have the cash to pay someone to do it that quick. We had no choice. We had to rip everything out and in 48 hours try to get a bathroom back together. So when you sit there thinking that, oh my gosh, the world has got me down in this burnt thing, all right, it could be worse. You could be sitting in a load of number two, that's all I'm going to say, and have to rebuild. But I did rebuild. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't overnight. There was no viral moment. There was no rich uncle, and there was no lottery ticket. It was one day at a time, one decision at a time. In the case of being here today, one connection at a time, one opportunity at a time. You see, the phoenix doesn't rise because the fire was easy. It rises because something inside survived the flame. While I have never been one of those people who have actually been close to or thought about committing, well, I do think about committing suicide. I do suffer from depression. And I suffer from depression not because of some, weird chemical imbalance. I suffer from it because I take a medicine for epilepsy, and a side effect of that medicine is depression. And I fought it for years, and the doctors wanted me to put me on another medication. And I'm like, I will not take a medication for the side effect of another medication. I decided that is like that fear, that thing inside of me that's alive, it's not going to quit. And I remember the movie that I watched, and I went, I can do this. And that's where it was born in me. And I was watching the movie. It was called A Beautiful Mind. It was a Russell Crowe movie, and this man had to deal with something that he said, in my mind, I'm going to deal with it. And that's the thing, that it's inside of you, that when you decide inside of you, I'm going to make it through it. And I use that every day, including this weekend while I was cleaning up number two in a bathroom. I learned to make it through. It's not a motivational quote that carries me. It's a thing inside of me that goes, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. I don't care how much this is. I'm not quitting. My wife said to me this weekend, Tim, after I told her we're going to go do this, and the job started to look bad, she goes, "Oh, it looks bad." I said, "No, no, trust me. We can do this, and fix it." She goes, "You hate being right all the time." I said, "I'm not right all the time. I just have had so much practice in having to find the solution so many times that I trained my mind to keep trying to find the solution." And I hope today, if the one thing that I can give you out of this whole part of being here today from me is become a person who does nothing but seek the solution. When I hear Roxy speak and hear Roxy's everything she's gone through in her life, she's always seeking the next solution. She motivates me with that. One of the other movies in my life that I tell everybody, it was my favorite movie. I even told Dr. Dean Cain on his podcast, it was my favorite movie, and Dean about fell over laughing when I told him. And my favorite movie is Joe Dirt, because a man who had no outcome of any possibility of success had the most positive mindset in the world, while the world was basically dumping number two on him. Think about that. Your mind will be the one thing that carries you out of this. You have to decide that this fire is not the end of your story. That whatever it is you're going through, this is not the end. And I'm going to tell you this because in my life and in my story, some of you have heard me in other places speak. I'm a speaker because I knew Zig Ziglar personally. I didn't know Zig a speaker, I knew him personally. And I'm going to tell you the same thing that I had Zig tell me even as he left this earth. That whatever you're going through, all right, you can keep going, and you can keep that mind going forward, that it's going to impact someone's life, because Zig Ziglar's now been gone from us 14 years and he still impacts my life every day. And I know that as I leave this planet someday, and I'm not going to leave this planet because of I'm not going to commit suicide. That's just the way I am. I'm mindset that way. When God says, Tim, it's time for you to come home. First of all, I'm going to rejoice because it's graduation day. Number two, I know that whatever I did on this earth is going to see someone like you. Maybe it's you listening today. Maybe it's you listening to the recording of this. Whoever it is, as you're listening to it, you're going to go, Tim kept the faith, so I can keep the faith. The phoenix never asks for permission to rise, and neither should you. Sometimes the greatest things that you have happened to you first look like life is falling apart, but then I'll let you fill in that sentence. I'm Tim Gillette. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Tim. Wow, that was really powerful. Really appreciate that. Uh, wow, we've had some really great speakers today. I'm so honored when I envisioned it, I didn't know which way it was going to go. And I think that's sort of like how life goes. We think, or my grandfather used to say, men make plan, God laughs. We just don't know always how things go. The next thing I just want to talk a little bit about, I've been talking about books, and while this is all something I put together and the books that I wrote and things like that, there is a weave through it because I want to help get people's stories out there. And the next book I want to just talk a little bit about, probably a different way of doing it, is this book Redemption. So that book actually was my first solo opportunity to be an Amazon #1 bestseller. That's not what I'm here to talk about. The book I wrote, and then I went on a vacation with my kids. My mom had just passed uh, the year before, and I wanted to take them away. The cruise left the day of her birthday. If that wasn't a sign to me, yeah, we got to go celebrate grandma for the girls and my mom, and we did that. So I wrote this book. The book, our stories are our therapy. That's why you need to write them. I was going through a lot of things when I wrote that book. And because I decided I'm going to be the phoenix, I'm going to be always rising. When you go through something, it's the resources you use. Like most of the people who've spoken already are a resource that you could use, not only myself. That's why having that community, having those people. Again, Connie moved when I moved in to the house, and then Connie decided to help me out. Wow, community. It's not only just physically where you live, it's the people you associate with. So that book, the funniest story about it is that I wrote it because it was just a healing journey for myself. And I didn't think anything of it. I was left on a cruise, went to the cruise, came back, and one of my friends was like, "My daughter needs to speak to you." Your daughter needs to speak to me. Why? Well, I made her read the book during the summer break. And I go, okay, so she's upset with me. She goes, no, she's not. And the funniest part about it is this little 12-year-old kid who read my book, she then had some more questions. Again, proof to us that we never know who's going to hear our stories. That when I put this on YouTube and all these stories are going to be on YouTube, we don't know who might hear those stories, right? There's algorithms and things like that. I didn't even think who was going to read that book. I really didn't make a push. There's a lot of people who make the push to be Amazon one bestseller. It happens because it just happens sometimes. You put out that energy. And then that book turned into something that I just really, so one of the other books, when I talked about that I'm launching, I'm dropping, publishing, is Open Road. Now, Open Road is the story, the second part, and I'm actually finishing up the third part as well. Because once you start writing, once you start doing that creative thinking, it just keeps expanding. Um, the book was written, and there's some little parts. One of the other books I wrote is called The Motorcycle Sage, which was dedicated to a gentleman who is my one of my mentors. Was one of the people who really meant a lot to me. Who I found out about 2 months ago passed away. And the last time I spoke to him was on my birthday last year. I hadn't spoken to him, and he reached out to me just to wish me a happy birthday. And then I didn't know that he passed away. It was my father-in-law, it was my ex-father-in-law. So I hadn't spoken to him, but we had kept a close relationship. And I then weaved my story with redemption because it was about some of the situations in my life that I had gone through. And the motorcycle sage showed up in that book, in this new book, just as a nice weave, kind of an Easter egg for me. And I wasn't sure I was going to publish it. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Was I going to rewrite the book? And while we can't rewrite our stories, We can't rewrite the things that might have happened to us. We can still leave our mark. And, for Lou, there's a couple of books coming out actually, um, because I keep writing. I love writing. I'm not that great at it, but I'm good enough that people tell me that the stories that I write, it hits them. And that alone is a reason to be why writing a book, being on podcasts, having the right speeches, like you've heard from some of these people today, shows an impact. And you just don't know who needs to hear your story. And while Lou enjoyed, he thought it was cute that I had some stories that he was in. I didn't know if I was going to publish that book because of where it's dedicated and all those pieces, or how he weaves himself in to my stories. But it's also because he's weaved himself into my heart, and we all do that. Now, one of the people, well, our next speaker, is really one of those people that I just met. It was a random, those coffee meetings that many of us have, and really, you don't know who you're going to meet when there's a lot of people in our business who you connect with, and you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to get off the call. Well, Kaylee's not one of those people. Kaylee is actually one of those people I am so honored to have met, and we've connected, and we kind of weave each other back and forth. And while I've said, no pitching or anything like that, I will ask everybody, it's for free. So we need to vote for Kaylee for Artist of the connection with Johnny Depp and a whole bunch of things, because she is an amazing person. One of the first conversations we had was about the Phoenix Rise, and at the time she had a teal background. Her room was teal, and as you all know, I'm connected to teal, and we spoke for about 15 minutes just of the power of teal. So for those who don't really understand why I wear teal, it's not so I stand out. Because if anybody really knows me, I don't like standing out. I don't mind leading, but I don't like standing out. But the teal, as Kaylee and I had spoken that day, is about grounding. That's what it's all about. So the ashes is not just because we fall apart. It's about us coming back together and rising ourselves. Those are what the stories is about. That's why we like those John Campbell, you know, storylines, right? The guy who had nothing who comes back and wins. It's wonderful when it happens, but it's also wonderful with the people you meet along the way. And no matter what connections we have, those connections never stray. So I am so glad that all the connections that I've made, and I'm going to bring up Kaylee right now, and we're going to hear Kaylee share her stuff. All you, Kaylee.
Hey guys, I'm a little speechless, Dave. Thank you for that introduction. I've really been connecting with a level of humility this past 10 years, and I used to be terrible at taking compliments, and I guess I still a little bit am. I feel like my cheeks are a bit red. But thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and I'm looking at the power in this room and appreciating each and every one of you. Thank you. So the Phoenix has been with me since I was a child. She's a totem for me. And I feel like I want to acknowledge that we have multiple Phoenix moments in our lives, and not to discount even ones that, some people want to talk about big Phoenix moments, but the little ones are just as important because they're all milestone markers. And because this totem has been with me for so long, I feel like my life has embodied that cycle. And I really connect with what Tim said about making the choice to go forward, because I'll tell you, in the last 10 years of my life, maybe a little bit longer, there have been many doors that I felt like I could walk through to give up. I feel like being an entrepreneur and, or a solo business owner is the deepest shadow work you'll ever do in your life. It will teach you everything you want to know about who you are and everything you don't want to know about who you are. So I feel like for me, my Phoenix era really, really seated when I was going through memories surfacing of sexual abuse. And I was very much struggling with my mental health at that point. And I met an incredible teacher at that time, and she introduced me to Reiki. And everything just skyrocketed from there and reopened incredible, huge gifts that I had had as a child. And I didn't plan to become an entrepreneur in the energy and intuitive world, but every time I tried to leave and continue doing things elsewhere, I studied as an artist musician. Those were the things that I did most of my life. Those are the vocations that I've put my heart and soul into and still a part of me. But every time I kind of tried to go in that direction, that world would say, no, just kidding. You need to be here. So eventually what happened, I started moving through these phases of the phoenix of what I call the ashes, the embers, the flame, and the rise, because I've really connected with, I probably should teach this at some point, but I've really connected with what each phase is and what it looks like and how it, what it teaches. And so that big first phase for me was the rediscovering of sexual abuse, coming into my vocation of life of where I am now and choosing that path of healing self and helping to work with others. I would say in the last decade, though, it's been the hardest Phoenix moment of my life. I got to a place where my body could no longer hold anything. There was unresolved trauma, spiritual suppression, invisible illness, incredible, difficult family dynamics between different members there, undiagnosed Lyme disease that led to very serious medical trauma, and Epstein-Barr from having multiple bouts of COVID and influenza A that reacted everything. And it pushed me into a health crisis I couldn't think or hustle my way out of. And I really felt like I was being asked to rebuild from the inside out. And unfortunately, during that time, and I'm still kind of in this embers phase with the Phoenix space, because I feel like I'm in a Phoenix moment. It's either go do this or be done. And every day I wake up, I just make a choice. What are you going to do today? And during this last 10 years, art was really the way that I found back to myself. And for all the years that I had been an artist for other people and a healer for other people, I thought, why? I can combine this. There's a way that this can work, because I figured out how to do this for myself. And I figured out how to allow the art that flows through me for other people to work for me. So now I've gotten into a phase where I'm really helping people transform, move emotion somatically, intuitively, to help them return to their own temple of truth. And the reason why that's important is because I had to actually live that. I feel like in the last 10 years, I've been stripped from everything I thought I knew, wanted to know, explore, even levels of social norms, mores, political views, all gone. Things that I was originally raised with that I thought this was the way that you do things, ignored my intuition on, and gave my power away to a lot of things, including coaches who I thought, well, they know better than me. It doesn't matter what my intuition says. And instead, it's been a reclamation of that through art and energies. So I've had to live the path that I actually offer to other people. So it's very genuine. There isn't anything that I'm holding or bringing to the table that I took a 3-day class and then decided I'm a Reiki master teacher and now I'm going to make a living at it. No. When you choose to step into your mastery every day, as the Phoenix teaches you, it is a path that you walk, practice, and choose. It is not generally the first moneymaker of things. That's not what it's about. So as I had been moving towards this health, through this health crisis and getting things, I came to a pivotal place in my life, and I'm still in that pivotal place where I either have to choose disability and work on getting that to support my life, or I need to choose a business model that is going to create what will work to help support me, my body, and the life I ultimately am worthy and deserving of. And sharing, if you follow me on Facebook at all, people will say to you, Kayla is one of the most genuine, vulnerable people you ever meet. Like, I always share the truth about where I'm at, what's happening, what it's teaching me, how I'm moving through it. And through this, I think even the Phoenix teaches you how to ask for help. Because in the revival process, in those rebirth processes, sometimes we need our people around us to get us to where we need to go, or even where we want to go. And when we're confused about that, we need the right people around us to hold the space for us to rest in those ashes. Because that's really what the ash phase to me is about. It's actually not a doing phase, it's a resting phase. It's a dreaming phase, it's a thinking phase, and it's a reckoning phase. Then you move into the embers. The embers is absolutely okay. The dreaming is becoming more of a reality. I'm really feeling into my truth now. I'm really seeing what's possible and plausible and where I want to lead and put my energy into. And then you can move into that flame phase. That's the doing phase. That's the inspired action phase. That's the life force energy phase. And then you go into the rise phase, which is the space where we integrate all of the things that we have learned, and it is the new level of authenticity and genuineness, all of that. So I really live my life by these spaces. And I think coming together to talk with people about the Phoenix archetype and how important it is and how it can lead us through our lives is incredible. My business used to be named the Phoenix Lightworks. And I just gave that up and decided just to be me, because the next level of authenticity said you don't need to hide behind the cycle. You can just practice it and just be yourself. And now I bring people through those phases through energies and art, whether it's a reading or a major master multidimensional session where we peel back your epigenetics and your inner child work and your aspects of self work. Or we couple all of that into an incredible, creatively channeled artistic project where we walk you through and you use the art somatically to move the second frozen energy. This is what I had to learn. This is what I had to work with. And this is what I continue to walk through all of the things. And I found a way through my Phoenix spaces to really bring everything I did together. I think one of the hardest things about being in the coaching industry and listening to people who you put on a pedestal, which I don't ever recommend, like the guru archetype needs to die a hard death, in my opinion. We need to stop that, because there's a lot of performance spirituality being played out there, and it's actually hurting people. So in those places and listening, whether it was a podcast or, a webinar or a masterclass, as they call it, I found myself saying, like, no, I don't want to niche down. That would not be genuine for me. The niching is actually in the messaging, not about who I serve or how I do it. And there were so many moments in those times where I could stay a brilliant psychic and a brilliant intuitive for other people. But when it came to myself, I was struggling. And that ultimately hurt me the worst. So this last 10 years, through this reckoning and this crazy back and forth between this ash and ember phase, really brought me, you call it a villain phase, call it a give no F's phase. I love the F word. It's hard for me to censor myself in public. Woo! But like, seriously, I whatever it is that you want, I feel like sickness, all of these things, facing needing to lean into the government for disability has taught me to really give less of those things. And to be okay with saying to a coach or saying to a teacher or saying to someone, that's not authentic to me. And I said to my coaches along this journey, if you're only going to put me into the system that worked for you, then you're not a very good coach, because you need to help me learn to work with my energy, period. Some of them didn't like that. But that's the dismantling that I probably needed to go through too. I'll be vulnerable. It's okay. We all make mistakes, and we're going to continue to make mistakes as we grow in this journey, because nobody's freaking perfect. But I know what it's like to carry trauma in my bones. I know what it's like to have sexual and emotional abuse shape my earliest memories, and how those things cycle into the decisions. I'm very good at pattern recognition now. I can see them from a mile away, and if I can't see them, I can intuitively know them. You don't even have to say a word to me. I can sit in front of you and give you exactly what it is that you haven't been able to connect for yourself. And if you don't need that end, I'd rather help you find your own truth through using the art. These are what the Phoenix moments have taught me. Hard lessons. Releasing people who have been betrayed, who have betrayed me. Releasing people who constantly want to fit you into a box, who do not have your best interests at heart, who want to create you being in their circle just because you're a sale. That's not what I'm about. And that's not what the Phoenix teaches either. The Phoenix teaches real life, breathing and burning experiences. And it doesn't matter sometimes if you want to choose it. You know if you're a Phoenix. You know if that's your life totem. There's no question. And Phoenixes naturally gravitate towards each other, and you don't even know that until you get in the room, like with what happened with Dave and I. He said Phoenix, and I went, it's all over. I don't need to know anything else. It's all you have to say, because people who are in that archetype know it. And I'm a Scorpio, so that's part of my archetype, although astrology is not my genius. I leave those to the other people. But it's pretty incredible to see where I've been and where I am now. And I have some incredible people around me, like Dave, who have been able to point out to me, don't worry, you've actually gotten better. So even in the Phoenix cycle, hindsight is still important to have, because the wisdom will seat in the present now moment when you take a reflection. And sometimes you need your helpers to help you do that. So if there's anything in my story and in my education that's coming across to those people who are out there, or the people that are in this room, I hope it offers to you that you can always make a choice every single day, even if that's temporarily giving up. That's okay. Sometimes you have to give in and give yourself space. I don't think shame belongs in any way, shape, or form, because how we choose to live our lives can be shaped by any decision that we choose to make. The difference is, do we have the infrastructure to support the learning from the mistakes and the changes that we need to make for ourselves? Thank you guys for letting me be in this room. You're muted, Dave.
Yeah, I tried to be quiet with everybody. But thank you, Kaylee, for, being in this room and for so many people. And as we're just rolling it out, so there were two other books that I wrote for my daughters, who just this weekend told me, why'd I do that? Because I wrote books to dedicate it to other people. And I'm going to try to, hopefully they'll get to the bottom of this video. Family is so valuable. And I don't know if he's on this call or not. I just want to also shout out to Morris Mayer. I couldn't have gone through the last 2 years of another Phoenix experience without him. There's so many people. I'm not gonna start naming everybody, but Morris was one of those people. If you don't know Morris, jump on. You want to learn about AI, jump on, get to know him, and his Tuesday night, late night, what is it? After dark, AI after dark. But you won't even scratch the surface of the type of human being Morris is. The type of being that he gives 100% of his heart, and might have a lot of ideas, and so do I. We match to match, um, and he helped me in the past 2 years in ways he'll never understand. No matter how many times I explain it, because it's our perspectives. Much like my kids are upset about the book, because the book isn't about them, but it's dedicated to them. What do we dedicate book things to? What are you dedicating to yourself to make sure that you get to that next level, that you rise out of your ashes? That's what this is all about. It's why I take time, and the first, and it was pretty successful because of the amazing people who helped put this together. And Mike Duffy taught me all this technology stuff, which I was able to weave in and out. You don't know Mike, get to know Mike. Mike Faber yelling at me and making fun of me and all that stuff, as one of my huge mentors in my life, is just so impactful for me, including Dr. Vinnie Faber, Doctor, because she has a double PhD. One PhD wasn't good enough, but they're good-hearted people. When you're in your ashes, find those good-hearted people. I've been lucky to do that. I've been lucky, with Lou Bonagura when he's my motorcycle sage. So it's one of those things that you find those people, but those people also come back and be one of those people. If you can't find one of those people, be one of those people. You'll find the right people. You'll find the phoenixes, and that's why Kaylee and I didn't know what I was walking into, but even with Heather recently, is more of a recent person that I got to meet. We met with in 5 or 10 minutes. We were like, okay, that's my people. Find your people. Be your people. I am those people. There's tons of people who weren't able to make this call for various reasons. But look for those lights. John Lennon once said, whenever there's a problem, look for the people running towards that problem. And those are the people you want to be around. Those are the people that want to be there, raising their hands first. So hopefully you all have people like Morris, Lou, and Michael all in your life. And if you don't, look for them. They are out there. And don't just say it. So that's why today was important for me to get my 12 episodes of the podcast out, to say that's when usually people give up. But I am engaged fully to not only my health, which I had not been part of before, taking care of myself. I was in pretty good shape, and I still am, really. The doctors are like, well, all your numbers are fine, but you had the big thing. And it's those big things that could stop us like a heartbeat. So from my heart to yours, as I always say, as the book says behind me, when your heart says it's your time to soar, get out of your ashes. It is so worth it. And if you know somebody who might be in their ashes, don't let them sit by themselves. Sometimes, and it's not a strength of mine many times, but sometimes sitting in silence is so powerful. And if you can't sit in silence, write it down, make that story as powerful as you can, because that is really what we're here today for. So I just want to wrap it up and thank you so much for having that Phoenix moment. And I hope you have a Phoenix moment and plenty of Phoenix moments. Not that I want to see sadness in your life, but you learn so much more when you actually rise and know that the ashes are not the last place that you have to be. So God bless you all, or I'll let the universe align with what your wishes are. And I wish you to gonna end it out like I always do my podcast. Bring a little peace and love into your life is for sure. And I have to bring your most authentic thoughts to do that. And I love you all. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.